If you are an accountant and you want to get more higher paying clients so that you can make more per client, increase your margins, hire better staff, and just enjoy all of the benefits that come from having clients that pay a premium, then today is your lucky day because I am going to explain how to actually make more per client and charge more for your services. And I'm not going to give you some basic advice that you've probably already heard about position yourself better or you need to communicate value better. And although that is important, there are actually a couple other things that I don't see a lot of people talk about, which, well, they are actually the best improvements that you can make to charge more for your services. So before we dive in, I will quickly introduce myself in case you are new to this channel. My name is Daan, the owner of Accounting Kings, where we work with accountants to get them more higher paying clients. We've been doing this for 7 years and it works really well. One of our clients, for example, added an extra $200,000 in new annual recurring revenue in just 9 months. And I create these videos just to give all the strategies and value and the tips so that you can attract more higher paying clients and help more businesses, because there are a lot of businesses out there that need your help. So let me directly dive in and explain to you how to attract higher paying clients as an accountant. So, introduction. Charging more relates to who you serve, how you position yourself, communication of value, and the services you provide. Of course, I talked about this a little bit already. It is still important that you do this, so I am going to go over this a little bit. But the services you provide is the main thing I want to talk about in this video, and I will dive into that a little later. But let's begin over here. Who you serve. Of course, if you want to charge $2,500 a month for your services, for example, it doesn't make sense to charge to target businesses that are doing $100,000 a year. They simply are not able to pay a premium. And who you serve also has to do, of course, with your own expertise. It makes sense that if you have a lot of experience working with restaurants or manufacturing companies, that you probably target these types of businesses because you can deliver more value. Right? So who you serve has something to do with basically your niche, but also your own expertise and if they actually have money. Now, how you position yourself, you do need to position yourself as an expert. And if you do a good job, you position yourself not as a cost, but an investment. And I'm going to dive into how to do that later on in the video. Then communication of value. That also has to do actually with positioning yourself as an investment and not as a cost. But communication of value can also have to do with stuff like talking about the impact on being compliant, basically communicating how this is having a benefit on their personal lives outside of just the business. And communication of value will depend per person, right? You can have two manufacturing company owners, but one person maybe doesn't really care that much about compliance and only cares about profits, while the other person really cares about compliance, right? So you need to figure out what is important to the person I'm going to talk to and how do I make sure that I deliver the value here, right? That's how you communicate the value. But then the service you provide. Now, if you are a bookkeeper watching this, then I don't want you to think that you now all of a sudden need to add fractional CFO advisory services, right? The services you provide, it can stay about the same. But the thing is, you can increase your fees by serving people with money, positioning yourself as an expert and communicating why this is valuable to them. You won't be able to go from $500 to $2,500 per month for the same client though. By adding money-making services, you can. So yes, you can do a better job at positioning yourself and communicating the value. But the thing is that if you think that you can 5x your pricing for the same client, like that's not going to happen. And I see a lot of people out there that say, oh yeah, just positioning yourself better and you just need to improve your communication skills. And although that this is important, it is not going to give you this biggest possible jump that you actually want if you really want to build a firm with high margins where you can hire talented staff, for example, pay yourself more, right? So we do this by adding money-making services. By adding money-making services, you not only provide more value, but it's easier to communicate value and you directly position yourself as an expert. So I will really dive deep into the money-making services later on in this video, but in a nutshell, money-making services are services that can directly make someone money. So, for example, doing the compliance or just doing basic bookkeeping or just a basic tax prep, that's not really making someone money directly. Although it is, don't get me wrong, if you are doing the basic bookkeeping, quote unquote basic bookkeeping, you are making someone money because you are saving them time, you make sure that they are compliant, right? But the thing is that as a business owner, they don't see these services as an investment, and they see bookkeeping or tax prep, for example, or sometimes even a CFO or an accountant, like they see those services as a cost, something that you do need to have as a business owner. But if you as the accountant position yourself that way and you do only offer the basic services, then you are not able to charge 5 times what your competition is charging, right? So you do need to add money making services, which are services where you can just show them, hey, I just made you money. Because if you do it that way, you are providing more value, right? And that's just better for the businesses. And of course, they will give you value in terms of money. It's easier to communicate the value because you just say, hey, I made you an extra $1,000 here, and I'm now going to increase my fees by 500, for example. But your positioning is also 10 times better because now you are an expert, because you are finally really one of the first bookkeepers or first accountants who was actually able to put money back into the pocket of the business owner, right? And by niching down, you can make this money making service quite easy for yourself because it's just a repetitive thing that you need to do. So you will not only be able to charge more, but you will also be able to book more sales meetings and convert more appointments to clients because you can make the biggest claims specifically to one person. So, for example, if you add a service which is helping contractors make or save money, what you can now do is make a claim specific to contractors about how you can make or save them money. And like, just think about that for a second. If you have 2 accountants, one is talking about, I can do your books and do your taxes, you are compliant. And the other one is saying, I can help you increase your profit margins by 5%. Who do you think will get more attention from contractors? It's always the person that is talking about putting money back into the business or in the pocket of the owner, right? That's like in some way why people are in business, to make money. Of course, also to solve problems, make the world a better place. But to some degree, finance, of course, is the business language, right? And if you can just show to someone how you can improve their financial situation, of course, it is more attractive than saying, I can do your books and do your tax, right? And in this document, I will give you examples of money-making services. So what you need to do is you need to pick a niche, decide what services you want to add, and use the outcome of the services in your marketing. So for example, contractors work with me to increase job profits by 5%, right? By having a message like this, for example, on your LinkedIn profile, or when you talk to prospects, or when you have a meeting with someone, or cut it out, or when you, for example, talk to someone on the streets, like, what do you do for work? Don't say, I do the books and do the tax for everybody that essentially has to pay tax, whereas bookkeeping, what you can now say, oh, well, I'm an accounting firm and contractors work with me to increase their job profits by 5%, right? So you will book way more sales meetings with potential clients because your whole messaging now is outcome focused, right? And you will be able to also charge more for your services because it's outcome focused. You will be able to convert more people to a client once they book a sales meeting, because it's all about the outcome that you can now deliver, which is then money in someone's pocket. Now, a quick side note with this, we talk about money-making services. You can also do this with compliance, by the way. A client of mine, Victoria, she was really focused on law firms, and we decided to really niche down on like the specific compliance stuff that they need to do. And in 60 days, she attracted 5 clients paying $1,000 a month each. So you can definitely also do this with compliance, but it needs to be very specific, okay? So if you want to win, you create a risk reversal with the outcome. So reverse risk by promising a refund, no charge for next month, discount, etc. So if you do not get them this result, you basically activate the risk reversal, right? Of course, you want to make sure you can actually deliver the result. Maybe look at their books first, check if you can actually deliver this result. And what you also want to do actually is just have a simple agreement where you say, hey, this is the result I'm promising here, but you do need to give me access to your QuickBooks and give me all of the files I need, right? And actually, another side note here, your client will also be a better client if you do it this way, because they want to get this outcome, and you make it clear to them, hey, I can give you this outcome, but you do need to give me all of your documents on time, just as an example. And you don't make it, and you don't put those terms in like the small letters at the end of an agreement or something. You just actually put it just on the first page, because again, the outcome is so important. Okay, so now I'm going to discuss a couple of money making services that you can introduce now I will introduce a couple money making services that you can add to your packages when you are niching down, so that you can charge more, book more meetings, but also make more sales. So I'm going to break them down in bookkeeping, tax, accounting, and CFO. So bookkeeping. Service number 1 is a profit leak audit. So a couple good niches are, for example, restaurants, retail, and construction, because typically they have quite some profit leaks. I am going to recommend niches. Thing is though, you can also do this for a real estate company. Let's be real. Like if they, for example, manage a lot of properties, you can still look at how they are currently leaking money. But again, the higher this promise here, the more attractive it is to people to book a meeting, become a client, and pay a premium, right? So you will most likely be able to have the highest outcome in these niches here, because typically it's like the profit. Because typically there are quite some profits leaking in these types of companies. So profit leak audit, what it is, you basically analyze expenses to uncover waste, duplicate subscriptions, supplier overpayments, and unnecessary costs. So it's not really that hard to do a profit leak audit if you just work with restaurants or just work with construction companies. So this is why I was saying you do need to niche down, because not only it's now easier for you to book meetings and to position yourself as an expert, communicate the value, but it's now also easier to actually deliver the service, right? So that's another huge benefit there. Profit leak audit, we actually use this with quite a lot of the campaigns that we run with clients. And service number 2 is an AR audit. So a couple good niches are medical, construction, and agencies. Now what it is, you just basically reduce outstanding receivables by improving the invoicing, collections, and payment processes. Now a client of mine, he actually did an AR audit for a medical company, and with the insurance billing there, it was a total mess, and he saved them $40,000, right? And you can imagine, then you are not just a normal bookkeeper or accountant again. Like the whole perception from this medical company on what a good accountant can do, it just totally changed. You just put $40,000 back into someone's business, okay, just by doing an AR audit. And think about that. If you mainly work with medical companies, you can do an AR audit like just probably in a couple hours, right? Because you have done it so many times already. Or if it takes longer, you can at least create an SOP for an AR audit, for example, or for all the other services I will talk about. You can create an SOP because the type of companies you work with are very similar, and then you can actually give this to someone else, right? So just operations also become way easier. This is also a really good service you can add. Then over here, service number 3 is the inventory audit. So a couple of good niches are retail, e-com, and manufacturing. So what it is, you basically find slow moving inventory, stock losses, and purchasing inefficiencies. So I was actually talking to a friend of mine who owned an e-commerce company before, and he actually almost went out of business because of the inventory. Like the shipments, one of them came in late and the other one came in too early. There was a big cash flow problem essentially there. And just imagine that if you are an accountant and you, for example, work with e-com companies and you speak their language and you can say, hey, I can do an inventory audit. I can then actually make it that you maybe can have, you need to rent less space, saving you money. You can buy less inventory because maybe we let go of some products just in general. And you just basically make their whole operation like 10 times better. And you want to pick services in niches where they are very aware of the risk or the problems, right? So, for example, with the law firm example I gave earlier, they're very aware of the compliance risk because if they are not compliant, that gets a huge reputation damage. But with ecom, they are very aware of inventory, right? So they know the problem, they are aware of it, and then it's very easy for you to communicate the value. And again, you are now an expert because no accountant or bookkeeper ever basically talked about doing that. Then service 4, subscription and expense audit. This is typically good for software as a service or agencies. They have a lot of subscriptions and like expenses that they don't really need to use anymore. So what it is, you basically identify unused software, recurring charges, and unnecessary overhead. So, for example, I run an agency myself before, and there are so many just recurring like subscriptions that these types of companies have with software or with so many bills for certain services, for example, and it becomes a total mess at some point, which can cost them a lot of money. So by just creating a simple system where you can do an audit, again, you position yourself as an expert and you can help someone save quite some money. And then we move to the text. Then we move to the tax section. Now, of course, service number 1 is just a tax savings plan. Like tax planning, that just makes a lot of sense, right? And in some way, all of the other services I'm going to talk about, that is actually tax planning. But the thing is, even though that if you are maybe not like a tax planning expert, you can still suggest some tax strategies to your clients, right? So tax planning, just business owners in general, but also wealthier individuals. So for example, doctors, lawyers, but also CEOs. They typically make a decent amount of money, but they don't necessarily need to have a business, right? But then what it is, of course, building a proactive tax strategy using entities, retirement plans, depreciation, and just income timing to legally reduce the taxes, right? Most of the people already know this. But then what is actually quite smart, and this is also why I actually wanted to include a couple of specific strategies, is because what you can now do if you niche down, and if you know a couple of tax strategies that a lot of these types of companies or people are not using, you can actually ask them a question about, hey, quick question by the way, are you currently structured as an S Corp? Because I see a lot of contractors who aren't, and it's costing them thousands of dollars every single year. So that's a really easy way to get someone's attention. We use this ourselves actually, where I basically give the systems and the methods to accountants, and we always test new stuff. And recently this started working really well, where we just ask a question and you also deliver value, but you also do create some stress or maybe a little bit of fear about, wait, am I doing this the right way? Is my current account doing this the right way? And then it's a very easy way to start the conversation. So yeah, entity structure review, some good niches, professional services, contractors. This is a more general one. And you just basically review whether they use an LLC or an S Corp or another structure that is more effective for them tax-wise. Then over here, see service number 3, the cost segregation review. This is really good for real estate, hotels and warehouses, of course. You can also just implement this again for other niches that maybe own the building that they are in. But this is a really awesome one. A client of mine worked with real estate and they saved someone $560,000 with a cost segregation review, and they were specific to real estate. So they were just bumping out cost segregation reviews left, right, and center because it was so easy for them to do. Okay, And again, it's so much value, and it's just niching down and then having a couple strategies like this is just absolutely key. So yeah, what it is, you accelerate the depreciation to improve cash flow through larger upfront deductions, right? And then if you want to go a step further, you can then also make a plan about, okay, well, you now have cash flow. You know what? Let's take a look at which real estate buildings or whatever make more money, right? I'm just making something up here. But you can also just look at some other clients and then give them some advice based on the extra cash they now got. So for example, what you can do, going a little out of topic here, but another client of mine works with automotive companies, and he was seeing that some of his clients were struggling a little bit, but others were thriving. Now, he was looking at what the other people were doing that were thriving, and he basically saw that lower cost cars with the economy nowadays sell more often, but also have higher margins. So guess what? He was able to just tell to his other clients, hey, I have some other people in some other states that are doing X, Y, and Z. I want to basically advise you to do the same. And just think about that for a second. Like this client of mine, like he added like $22,000 in monthly recurring revenue just by niching down and talking about that stuff with his other clients in similar niches. But he can charge more for his services now. But the operations, they become so easy, right? Because you are basically just repeating the whole process. You are systemizing the whole service delivery, which is awesome. Over here, Service 4, the R&D tax credit. This is basically for software, manufacturing, and engineering. And then what it is, it's the identify qualifying activities that may generate valuable tax credits, right? So just the basic R&D deductions. But again, you do want to check this with these types of businesses. Then we go a little bit deeper into the accounting space. So Service 1 is the margin audit. And a quick thing, by the way, you want to think in non-binary terms of like the services above here, right? I appreciate, of course, if you are a bookkeeper, you don't want to do tax, that you leave out the tax stuff. But if you are more a bookkeeper, you can, of course, still offer a margin audit. Maybe you've done it for one person before, or maybe with an accounting job you had, or maybe you just learn it and then you can introduce it, because it is one of those money-making services that are very valuable. So margin audit, some good niches are just construction, HVAC, and manufacturing. So what it is, it's basically you determine which jobs, products, or services generate the highest and lowest margins. A lot of the times, these types of companies that don't really know, and then you can just take a look at everything again. You've by then done it a couple of times already, so it's quite easy for you to do. And you can directly charge way more for your services. And it's so valuable for these businesses too. And over here, Service 2, the customer profitability analysis, which is really good for agencies, logistics, and also wholesale. Specifically for logistics, we are currently running a campaign in the logistics space. And a lot of these types of companies, we talk to them, they come to the accountant saying, yeah, I just want the basic stuff. And then the accountant actually says, okay, sure, by the way, which clients are most profitable for you right now? And by asking these types of questions, they just start thinking, well, I think X, Y, Z, or I don't really know. And of course, that can be a very valuable insight. Now, what it is, show which customers are actually profitable after labor, discounts, and overhead. Now, then Service 3, which is the pricing analysis. Some good niches are contractors, law firms, and medical. And basically, like the pricing analysis or the example I gave with the automotive accountant, like there are a lot of services you can introduce. These are just the main, these are just the ones that you are most likely to use because it's a little bit broader. So yeah, what it is, you basically identify pricing opportunities to increase profit without significantly reducing the demand. So if you have a lot of clients in those niches and you know what your other clients are doing, it's so valuable that you can just either give them the direct advice about, hey, my other clients are doing this, or you just create a process like this once and then you can just directly implement this with your other clients. Now, then the Service 4, the job costing audit. This is really commonly used. and the good niches are construction, landscaping, roofing, or basically can also just be other trades that have jobs. For example, if you work with plumbing companies and do a lot of plumbing jobs, of course, it can also be a valuable service. And what it is, you basically implement job costing so owners know the true profit on every project. And this, again, you can say, oh, we are going to do a job costing audit to someone, but you always need to tell the end outcome, which is going to help you make X percentage of extra profits, or don't say percentage, but a specific amount as a minimum, for example. And again, you want to probably look at someone's books before you do a risk reversal with that. But it's so valuable because, like I said earlier, just charging more without doing something different, it's not going to cut it. Now, then we go a level deeper again into the CFO space, and then we go into the service section 1, which is on the cash flow forecast. So some good niches are construction, logistics, but also seasonal businesses like landscaping can actually be a really good one for this too, depending on the type of landscaping company, same with HVAC. But the cash flow forecast is really important. So, for example, what it is, you build a rolling 13-week cash flow forecast to prevent cash shortages. So actually a family member of mine owns a HVAC company, and he came up with this idea himself to sell certain installations that can heat but also cool. So if you, for example, are an accountant and you work with HVAC companies, you can also just suggest that with clients, right? So your positioning will again be 10 times better than your competition. And by the way, with positioning yourself than your competition, it's not about using different types of words or just saying, oh yeah, but like we provide value because we know what we are doing because we have been in business for 40 years. Like, yes, that is valuable that you have been in business for a long time or that you have a QuickBooks certification, but you have to realize that there are a lot of accountants like that nowadays. But if you do niche down and you can just show to someone how you are going to make someone more money or deliver a certain thing guaranteed that they really want, like for example with the compliance thing with the law firm owners, that's just like night and day difference in terms of how people see you versus your competition. Now then, service 2, KPI dashboard. This is basically with established businesses. It can also be with startups, but there is more value, of course, with established businesses. So what it is, you basically track KPIs like gross margins, labor percentage, cash flow, AR aging, and net profits. And again, if you do this for a specific type of business, it can become quite easy, especially if you know their software and their terms. Now, service 3, then the pricing strategy review. This is on good with professional services and contractors. So basically you determine optimal pricing based on margins, demand, and cost, which is also pretty awesome. And again, you can implement this with different businesses too. And then we go to the service number 4, which is the profit improvement plan. You can basically maybe combine all of the stuff that I said above there, but you can do this essentially with any type of company, right? So you basically create a 12-month roadmap to increase net profit by reducing costs and improving pricing. So think about this in non-binary terms, right? It's not the case that if you are just a bookkeeper that you cannot recommend to switch maybe to an S corp, maybe not the implementation itself, or that you cannot do like a margin audit. There is some overlap, right? I just want to create this video for you to start thinking about how you can actually charge more, because just niching down and saying that you are now a landscaping accountant where you deliver the same exact service is not going to allow you to go from 500 to 2,500, right? You do need to actually add some services in there. And if you do deliver more services, just in general, you are spending more time on a client. So a lot of business owners will then, of course, understand, okay, well, I will have to pay you a little bit more. But by delivering services that are literally making them more money and you can just prove it, it's so stupid for a business owner to say no. If you come to a business and you can say, hey, I can do a margin audit for you, and I've done this for another construction company which has similar revenue, similar profits, and we've actually uncovered about 30K in profit leaks, like, and if you can even have a risk reversal with that, business owners are going to be like, okay, well, you know what, my current account is not doing it, or I have someone in-house, or I'm doing it myself and they are also not doing it. So you know what? If you can make me more money, you can make me 30K, and I need to pay someone to do it anyway. Like, I'm going to pay you at least like $1,500 to do it, right? This is a doubling of my money. And I also don't have to do it myself anymore. So yeah, I really hope that this was valuable. We 9 times out of 10 use those money making services with the clients. It's actually more than that, like almost every single time. There are instances where we don't, but those are rather exceptions. So if you want some help with getting more higher paying clients, there's a link in the description that you can click on to watch a short video on what it exactly is that I do, but you don't have to. I genuinely create these videos because I know that there are a lot of businesses out there that do need services like this, and you, the accountant watching, can help them out. So yeah, if you learned something, if you got some ideas, some value, make sure you like and subscribe. If you have questions, just leave them in the comments and I'll answer them for you, and I will see you in the next video.